Hello folks, welcome back. I need to get in front of this story before it gets out of control and explain a few things to folks about what is happening. A headline from the News Center Maine reads, 50 South Africans to resettle in Maine next week. Now this story is released on Veterans Day, November 11th. So next week would be the 17th or 18th. So they're saying that next week there will be 50 South Africans arriving in Maine. Now I can't confirm if that's true, and I also think that's optimistic. Perhaps this is an expectation that budget money will be released and people who've already had flights booked won't be canceled and will be coming over. We shall see next week. Maine is set to be the new home to 50 white South African refugees, and the first arrivals are expected next week, according to the Maine Immigrant and Refugee Services, or MERS. Now first, I'm not sure how they know that there will be 50 white South Africans coming, since the program is open to all racial minorities, including Indians and coloreds, both of which have already arrived among the first 400 South African refugees currently living in the United States. Second, how is it even germane that they might be white? Does that news outlet report that black Somalis are arriving when they land in Maine? What does that have to do with anything? They're refugees, done and dusted, finished in Clar. Do they call Ukrainians white too? I mean, what's the point of mentioning that they're white? That has nothing to do with anything. I don't recall anyone talking about refugees from anywhere else in the world based on their skin color. Why are you singling out the South Africans because of their skin color? Inza Watara, the state refugee coordinator through Catholic Charities Maine, said last year Maine had 950 refugees allocated to it amongst the 125,000 that were coming to America. And the resettlement program to Maine brought in about 500. Watara. Doesn't sound very Midwestern. Sounds kind of West African, no? Now, his statement does raise a question. The headline on the story leads one to believe that next week 50 South Africans will be arriving in Maine. But Watara's comment leaves one with the impression that there will not be 50 next week, but rather those 50 will be spread across the rest of the fiscal year. Ruben Torres, the Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition's advocacy and policy manager, said that this is the first group of Afrikaners coming to Maine through the federal refugee program. He said the new arrivals will be considered free cases, meaning they are being resettled to areas without an existing community. Afrikaners. So Mr. Torres has confirmation that the entire group of 50 are Afrikaners. Or is he just parroting the media myth about the program and ignoring the fact that it's for racial minorities? Of course, they are to be settled in areas with no existing Afrikaner or South African communities. We've never had refugees from South Africa, especially in Maine. So where would they go? He says, we're really worried about how we can make sure they feel supported and integrated into the state when there's not a large community for them to work with. So we're working with partners to make sure that they have as much support as we can offer them. Now, Mr. Torres is obviously not very familiar with South Africans. You see, they live in a country with many languages, 12 official ones, where English is the lingua franca, and folks are from a developed state, not Somalia or Sudan. But not to worry, Mr. Torres, the South Africans will be just fine, provided you lot deliver the services that we taxpayers give you money to pay for their resettlement. Now, the Maine Immigrant and Refugee Services, or MERS, is going to handle all 50 South Africans resettling in Maine. Folks, MERS is yet another not-for-profit set up to resettle refugees in America, part of the $2.9 billion annual mill of taxpayer money resettling people from around the world in America, providing services. So I just want to make sure that people are not freaking out. I don't know if these 50 people are coming to Maine next week, and I sure as heck don't know if they're Afrikaners. I think the media is getting it wrong. I believe what's happened here is that one of these resettlement groups, like MERS, has been notified by the State Department that their allotment for the coming year will be 50 South Africans. And either the government told them they're Afrikaners, or they simply believe the nonsense they read in the media. The odds are very good that there will be coloreds and Indians amongst that allocation of 50 South Africans that resettle in Maine. I believe it will be throughout the course of the year. We shall see. All right, so there you have it, folks. It's a news report. Take it for what it's worth. If the government shutdown ends, it seems very likely that the first Afrikaners or South Africans, whichever, or both, there are South Africans. If the lockdown ends next week, it seems very likely that the first South Africans will arrive in Maine as refugees. It's a beautiful state, plenty of taxes, run by Democrats, but a beautiful state, lots of natural beauty. And LL Bean's based up there. So, good luck to everyone who shows up. Cheers.